So we provide about 25–30% of the funding to that project to de-risk the technology.
That's all the way from the airport all the way into downtown, is that right?
So it's currently kind of east-west, but you're right. From an energy efficiency perspective, the one that comes to mind was probably Effect Home Builders or Edmonton.
Good morning and welcome to episode 9 of Crownsmen Energy. Today we are joined by John Adams. He is the Managing Director at Natural Gas Innovation Fund. Today we will be digging into how they support the cleantech innovation in the natural gas sector with their different funding stages from research, demonstration, and deployment. But before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. We are sponsored by Savona Equipment. Are you working on pipelines, oil and gas projects, renewable energy, or LNG and need some cash? Well, Savona Equipment has industrial pumps, electrical equipment from motors to transformers, and even surplus pipe and much, much more available now. Visit savonaequipment.com where you will find more equipment every day. We are also sponsored by PowerZone Equipment. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit powerzone.com for more information. Well, let's get on with episode 9 of Crownsmen Energy.
Welcome to Crownsmen Energy. I am your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show, we have John Adams. I'm very excited about this guest because it's a lot of the questions that I've been wanting to ask about funding in the industry, and John Adams has the answer because he is the Managing Director for Natural Gas Innovation Fund, or NGIF. We're going to cover a lot in the show today. John, thanks for coming on the show. I'm very excited to have you on.
Super welcome. I'm very welcome to be here, Jared. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to this.
Where are you based out of right now?
Yeah, so Jared, I'm based out of Ottawa, which is sometimes quite interesting. People ask me, in Gas Innovation Fund in Ottawa. So, but yeah, I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But yeah, based out of Ottawa, but primarily I do a lot of trips out to your neck of the woods, given that we have a lot of investors in NGIF that are based in Calgary. But yeah, working out of Ottawa, a great city, and well, of course, under COVID, we haven't been doing a lot of that traveling right now. So right now, based out of Ottawa, at home.
Well, I was going to say I was in Ottawa I believe in February, and well, first of all, I was quite taken back by all the construction and everything that's going on. It's really I mean, of course, it's a very developed city already, but it's sort of going to another level now. But I was still struck by, even though it's quite a large city, and you see the Parliament building, which I'd never been there. That was a special place for me. I mean, we couldn't go in at the time and that, but we didn't get a chance to, but just to walk around and see it. But it really struck me how quiet it got after 5 o'clock. I've never been to a city that size. It was just quiet on a Wednesday. It was just gone.
Yeah, that's as you know, primarily a government town or Crown Corps, and so there's certainly a departure pretty quickly around 5 o'clock, and folks go out to the suburbs. It is changing. To Ottawa's credit, it's changing. We have now the LRT, which was just set up earlier this year, and it's I would say there's a bit of a secret that's getting out, and that is that Ottawa's got museums, it's got a hockey team, it's got galleries, it does have restaurants, although they get empty a little bit sooner. And people get home relatively early, meaning not at 8 o'clock, maybe like in Toronto or Calgary, but sort of 5:30. And so the work-life balance piece and the fact that you can have a great job and also be home with your families at a reasonable time is kind of the secret that's out there. And so if you move around Ottawa now, you'll see that there's cranes everywhere. There's a lot of condos being developed. The housing market's booming. There's bidding wars, and I think that's a testament to folks wanting to move to Ottawa and sort of enjoy that secret that's getting out there.
Well, yeah, actually, just to add to that, what I did notice is that when I walk by like Parliament or the library that's there and things like that, it's very quiet. But then as soon as we went into where the restaurants were, we had to wait 45 minutes. I have to say it was the best ramen I've had since being in Japan. It was amazing. And I think the lineup there was 45 minutes because, yeah, it was like everybody was out for dinner. It's quite, and that line, that's going to go, that's opened, right? That's all the way from the airport all the way into downtown. Is that right?
So it's currently kind of east-west, but you're right. The line is going to now connect from downtown Ottawa to the airport. And so it's going to make Ottawa go up to the next level from an infrastructure perspective and from a service. And so now you're seeing all the cranes and buildings and development sort of surrounding, as you see in Toronto, where the sort of the stations are, and
yes,
people to just jump on and enjoy the train. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I should clarify to the audience, we are not funded by the city of Ottawa or anything like that. It's just I hadn't been there. I hadn't been there before. You live there, so it's a very interesting city. If you get a chance, you should go check it out. Okay, let's jump into NGIF, John. Give us that bird's eye. What is your organization? And then let's drill into how the funding, who the funders are, the collaborations, the strategy, everything like that. But let's go with that bird's eye view first.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Jared. So I can talk about the Natural Gas Innovation Fund forever. And as you noted, it's NGIF for short. Certainly, it was born out of a need or because there was a gap in innovation. So we, in particular, were created to accelerate clean tech innovation, and more specifically in the production of gas or pipeline transmission of gas, so big pipes across Canada, or the end use distribution of gas. And so by accelerating clean tech innovation in that particular area, we can improve the performance or our contribution to the performance of the gas sector from both an environmental perspective, so lower emissions, and then from an economic perspective, from a lower cost perspective. And so we being NGIF were created by the Canadian Gas Association, and so that's why I'm in Ottawa. That the association is based out of Ottawa with its member utilities across Canada. So we are located in there. We are a brand within the CGA, and we were created to be industry-led. So, and I can speak to that in a few minutes, but from a perspective of what kind of clean tech does industry need? So industry-led. We're also funded by industry, and it's a unique model because it's a granting organization, and we built it that way deliberately, and I can speak to that in a minute. So we provide grants, although if we have some time, I'd love to tell you about our second fund, which will be on the equity side. But we provide grants to our clean tech startups. And so the idea was to lead this fund across Canada. So it wasn't created yet. So I was brought on in 2016 as well to kind of create and build the fund and take it from what was a concept on a whiteboard to something that's now operational and doing great things and building momentum. And I would say we've now sort of established our place in Canada's sort of innovation ecosystem.
Right.
Yeah, we just to kind of how it's built, we have kind of an investment committee that's made up of really the CEOs and senior executives of the gas industry on the downstream and upstream. So we have an innovation committee that does all the heavy lifting. So we look together at deals, and those are generally the innovation / market / operations group, and so they're really good at knowing what's going to work in their sectors, or on their assets, or in their jurisdictions. We have a great little team that I've put together, and with experience in clean tech and business and engineering and gas. And then we also have partnerships with government, which I'll speak to, and then later, if we hopefully have time, we have a portfolio of companies that are kind of doing all the work to generate emissions reduction.
Well, I want to start with with some of the companies that are involved with the funding stream that you've got coming in. Now, and we'll get into some of the companies that you funded as well. But I want to have an understanding first. Now, is there a government element along with the private? And then are the people that are sitting on your board, or I forget what you actually called it, that are reviewing these companies? Are they the committee? Right? Are they also the funders? Like, how does that whole setup done?
Sure. Okay. So that's a good question, and it's part of the secret sauce of NGIF. But just to back up, I would say for sure we are the first time that NJF brought together the upstream and the downstream, and so there are associations for both within Canada that do lots of great work on those sort of separate sides. But we brought the upstream part investors and the downstream together to work on innovation into a single organization, which is now NGIF. And the idea was always to be the full value chain. So we wanted to be a vertical just for gas and doing good work for gas and doing our contributions to having an already competitive net emissions reduction molecule to be even better. And so we are in CGA. So of course, my first job was to go out and target those utilities. And so I met with the CGA members, and so had lots of conversations about the idea of an investment fund and with a process and sort of the things we want to do in terms of emission performance. So we signed on, so 2017, ATCO Gas Limited, we've got Enbridge Gas, Fortis BC, Pacific Northern Gas in BC, and Sask Energy in Saskatchewan. So 5 major players on the downstream side. And this group is of course, delivering gas to houses and businesses across Canada.
Right.
And then after that, we brought on the producers. So because that was always the intent. And so while we were sort of starting to operationalize the downstream group that I just mentioned, then I went out. Then I did a lot of trips to Calgary. I met a ton of companies, and so we secured Birchcliff Energy, so some Canadian and some multinationals. Birchcliff Energy is a Canadian CNRL, Canadian National Resources Limited. We have Chevron, so International Chevron Canada Limited, Perpetual Energy Inc. We've got Petronas Energy Canada, Shell Canada Energy, and then Tourmaline Oil Corp. So we have a mix of some small producers, some very large producers, and domestic producers, and some sort of producers that have an international home. And so with this group, now we have this huge amount of experience and expertise that we have with these companies. So to your question earlier, the CEOs or executives from those companies sit on my investment committee, who make funding decisions. I have to bring them forward and get them approved by them. And then on those same companies, we have that innovation committee I talked about, and they're the ones who bring all the expertise. And what's really good is that we have our own team of NGIF experts. Each organization has their team of experts, and so when we look at a deal, we look at some clean tech company that's got a super interesting value proposition for a solution for the gas sector. It's the saying 2 or 3, or sometimes in our case 12 heads are better than one. And when we
right.
And so I think that the point from a coming together piece, the downstream and the upstream, is that we the gas industry, the work we do at NGIF, we firmly believe that Canada's natural gas, provides a low cost, low emission energy source for Canadians. That's like our bottom line, and we think we can provide that to countries all around the world. We've got an LNG Canada plant being built on the west coast, and we believe that we have the net cleanest methane molecule from the organizations in NGIF. And so we just want to, as a group, collectively continue to drive that and continue to improve our emission profile, through innovation. And so that's why NGIF has deliberately kept to gas. We're not part of, we're usually it's oil and gas sector, but we've chosen to be just
to stick with gas.
Stick with gas, and to be very honest, kind of lean on the as part of the the renewable energy story with our emission performance work versus, in other kinds of dialogues.
Yeah, I was reading through some of the companies, and I did notice there were through some of the companies that you funded, and I was noticing there's sort of a theme of that renewable sort of is kind of an undertone, and certainly efficiency is sort of the undertone of what you're investing in. Just from a operational standpoint, when you have a committee of that, I mean, there's a lot of brain power that really understands what they're looking at. Is it a majority consensus that you have to reach, or is it once there's something that's really worth pursuing and funding, is it pretty? Does everybody sort of fall into agreement with it? Is it pretty clear when it's a good thing?
Yeah, so I'm lucky. I just came out of I was just 3 days in a virtual room, going through curated applicant pitches, and then that technical peer review committee we met, and to look at the list. Just to back up, we saw 100 applications. We shortlisted down to about 12. That's further reduced to about 10, and we've got now an outcome which is a little less, and so the conversations around the table are definitely built on trying to build consensus. I think these particular utilities and gas producers are, of the view that we are doing this from an industry perspective. So we want to make decisions that are going to help. Maybe it's not my backyard first, maybe it's your backyard first, and that's okay. A clean tech company is going to make it to everyone's backyard because that's what
right.
Right, is to be successful and have a lot of sales and good work. So yeah, there are sometimes specific peculiarities, I guess, from something that may not be right, in that particular company because maybe they phased out of that kind of asset or something.
I see.
Like that. And so I would say it's either a majority and with some exception, or it's consensus, and that's the great thing about what we're doing. They do have the option, like it's not it doesn't make sense from your organization's point of view, then you don't have to invest. You can sort of step back and.
Oh, I see. So you could withdraw one part if you're part of 12, you could withdraw yours essentially then.
From time to time it happens, and that's because something just doesn't, doesn't make sense. It's not the right fit. But I would say the group is really looking at this, and they've come together because this is an industry need, and they want to take it on as an industry led.
Right, from a holistic advancement of the industry, essentially. There is going to be at minimum hundreds of people watching this that are involved in something that they think that your organization could fund. Let's go with the first 20 that get knocked off right away. Why do they not even make it past that first round? I looked through your stages of the investment process, which was very nicely laid out on your website, by the way. I'll get Gowdy to bring that up. It really was helpful because it walks through each stage and then it leads to the next stage. But what that first intake, how did that first 20, for lack of a better word, get lobbed off, and then down to the 10?
Sure, that's a good question, Jared. It's sometimes a lot more than 20, but certainly so you're talking about our stage one. So we generally do a broad call. We actually don't care where the technology comes from. So it can be, I use the 80-20 rule. 80% is Canadian, but if you've got something from the US or from Europe and it's got something we want, then we're going to look at it.
Right.
What we care about is that the project is here in Canada and the end use applicability is with one of our 7 producers or 5 utilities. And so
I see.
Yeah. So then when we get the big batch that comes in and we start to look at them, the 3 check marks that if you don't make the 3 check marks right away, then you're going to be that first 20 off. And I would say it's really about eligibility, suitability, and what are you bringing to provide a solution to a challenge that the sector is seeing. And so if that's not really obvious right away, then you're probably not gonna make it. And that's sort of the first. And then as we kind of go down further, sometimes we do specifically look for. So there's, I don't want to get too technical, but there's development cycles. There's the sort of research stage, and then there's the demonstrations, the pilot stage, and then there's the later first commercial demonstration. Sometimes we're looking for a specific kind of project. So later in the development, looking at it. And so this one's a little early for us, so we have a watch list, which is important, and we kind of say, look, and we offer a debrief. So when to those 20 that didn't get selected, we offer a debrief, and we encourage them to come and talk to the NGIF team, and we'll tell them exactly, with key messages as to either you really aren't the right fit, but maybe you should go over to this group and company and apply, or you are the right fit, but you're just a little early for us, so we're going to keep watching.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of that.
So there's dialogue between even these initial, even if it's 20 or 80 or however many companies kind of right off the bat get taken off. There is a communication with them so that they know either why or how the next round. Right.
Exactly. We have a person that sort of leads that stage, and so I would say even before they apply, we try to have a conversation. Like anyone who's listening to this, if you've got an idea, the first thing you want to do is just contact us, and I'll leave my contact information, and we've got a team that will look at that. But talk to us first before you spend the time and put something together for us, because we can pretty much pretty quickly, and that's what we try to do. And then we start to sort of ratchet away. The due diligence is really important for NGIF, and it's becoming, I would say, quite known out there that the NGIF due diligence with the investor peer review committee that is. And the sort of future customer access, right? These are the future customers of the Cleantech company. This committee is quite important. And so, first of all, we don't want to, and so we take them through a comprehensive due diligence and technical peer review. We look at all the components of the great team, the innovation, the business path, the market need, the environmental performance aspects. And we do a site visit. We go out and kick the tires. Lately, we're doing it virtually, but normally we see the Cleantech company. We meet the team. Team's important for execution, and we and have a couple of site visits. And then along the way, when we do a site visit, there's a ton of input. So our investors are there at the site, and we're there at the site, and we're having a comprehensive discussion around their proposal, which they've submitted a draft, and then they get a ton of input, from our investors as to what they want, what they don't want to see, what's really important, clear KPIs that they're looking for. And then the takeaway from that meeting is a much better proposal that they resubmit. We curate them with some coaching, and then we get them ready to go in front of the committee again with what I would say is a much better value proposition than what they first came with, earlier on. And so that due diligence is quite important, because we want to make sure we put the right opportunities in front of our investors. It's also important because, and I'll speak to it later with government, we have some relationships with some governments who have money, and so we can hand them our due diligence and very quickly mobilize.
Right.
So anyway, that's our big stage sort of 2 process of NGIF.
That's very interesting, and I wanted to just quickly, before I wanted to go into a couple of the portfolios you manage, about a little bit about the government funding as well. But I wanted to just quickly ask, where do you find them? Like, is there, because they're known, do members from the committee also connect you? Is it all the above? I mean, is there a mainstream, or is it just multiple streams to bring in these companies in front of you?
Yeah, so I think if I had something that keeps me up at night, it's the deal. Where do we find the next deal? It's always the balance of quality and quantity. You don't want a ton of stuff come in and it's all not the right fit, but you also need to have a good funnel. And so I would say, Jared, every day I'm talking to some organization who has a building clean tech. So organizations that build clean tech. So that could be, and just to back up for a second, and if we have some time later, I've been a clean tech guy my whole life. I was first environmental, and then somewhere along the way that changed to clean tech over the decades. But as a clean tech uh, uh, guy, I know that you can take many clean technologies that are pointed in a different application and then just
Mm-hmm.
crack them to gas. And so,
Right. Yes.
yeah. And so the network that you're sort of alluding to, a ton of accelerators across Canada. There's a lot of university accelerators. So the old model for universities, the IP was in the research. Now they're creating little young companies to spin out. And so I'm trying to get those companies, get to the university, speak to those companies and tell them, look, you might be thinking about that sector for your technology, but if you come to the gas market, we have a ton of areas that we could use your technology in. And so we get them pointed to us and get them coming towards our product and getting them into the line of sight of NGIF. But there's a ton of organizations, not just in Canada, but in the U.S. and abroad, where
Mm-hmm.
continuing to have outreach with, and sometimes when we had conferences, you pound the pavement a little bit with the team
Yeah.
and find them and look for the deals. And I would say now, we are for sure, as 3.5 years old, and we are getting the words out that you can come to NGIF. You have the potential of getting funding. You get access to the potential investor. We spend our time in technology development, so we're getting you validated, we're getting you demonstrated, and hopefully getting you towards a first customer. So with that type of services, I guess you could say, people are coming to us, which is great, because as much as you want to pound the pavement and find them, it's better when they come to you. And so it's nice
Yeah.
that we're starting to get them out. And just the
Oh,
last piece would be our investors are also a great source.
right.
Of
Yeah.
course, or others get their doors knocked on all the time, and so now they just say, go talk to NJF. We're going to see it through the process anyway. So just go knock on their door and they'll take care of you.
That's a great system, actually, because yeah, of course, a lot of people are going to reach out directly to these companies, and now there's a filter. Now there's actually more heads at the table. We're not going to have. Hopefully, some of these companies that you're funding, we can actually get on to unpack their technology. We won't be able to go through that today, but I would like to just spend a couple minutes because I did take some time to read through some of the or on your website. Can you give just the audience just maybe a few examples of some of the companies that you funded, just to give them an idea of what kind of technology and businesses we're talking about?
Sure. So first of all, clean tech for gas specifically tends to look like energy efficiency. It looks like advanced natural gas recovery. It looks like carbon capture. There's a lot of digital transformation coming. Transportation, methane, in all sort of aspects of quantification and mitigation and so on, detection, and certainly on the downstream side, renewable natural gas and hydrogen. So we're seeing a ton. Those are sort of the categories that we look at. So from an energy efficiency perspective, the one that comes to mind was probably Effect Home Builders. They're in Edmonton. They've built a commercial building that's off-grid, completely off the electrical grid. It's fueled by natural gas. It's got two CHPs, some solar panels, so integrated clean tech. And this commercial building can operate completely off the grid and has some type of profile that I think is between 60 to 80% sort of greenhouse gas reduction. So quite proud of that one, and they're now in the market. Mike Holmes is a big advocate for Effect Home Builders, and so that's one of our sort of energy efficiency technologies. From carbon capture, we think we have two funded. We've got a couple in the hopper that are just coming through, but certainly carbon upcycling. So a great little technology company, and they've got sort of membranes for CO2. Then we have pond technologies. That's an algae technology that chews up all the dirty materials from the combustion of natural gas. With micro, so again, on the downstream side, where we spent a lot of time because the downstream was our first investors. And so, one of the things that, are really important to the downstream are the idea of residential combined heat and power systems, or even commercial heat combined heat and power systems. And so, wow, we have immersion, which has an absorption technology that complements the CHP system. We have an EnviroPower out of the US, another residential Cleantech micro CHP boiler. Just kind of thinking through, we have a iGen Technologies out of Markham, Ontario. They're a self-powered high efficiency furnace that has a black start capability. So if the power goes out, you've got about 48 hours worth of auxiliary sort of whatever you want to use that power for, a shower or Wi-Fi or whatever. We're seeing a growth in the natural gas heat pump space. So Stone Mountain Technologies and EnviroPower, Thermolift, I think are the technologies that come to mind that all have some type of natural gas heat pump that will be used in a house that, so instead of having, your furnace or your air conditioner and the heater for your pool, you just have kind of one unit, and that's where we're going, all powered by gas. From a hydrogen perspective, I think we have 4 hydrogen technologies, which are, very interesting to the downstream because they essentially, can green the pipes across Canada. Adding hydrogen will lessen the carbon. And so we have 4 hydrogenics out of Ontario, Econa Power, Blue O Technologies, and Celestra. They actually take natural gas as a feedstock and through their technology create hydrogen. So producers are quite keen on this one because it's also a new market for natural gas. So I could go on. I think the last one I should do is renewable natural gas, very important to our downstream utility investors and even the upstream who are looking to diversify their portfolio. So renewable natural gas, feedstock, a bio feedstock that goes through some type of technology that can create and scrub out and clean and produce pipeline spec gas that feeds into the system. So again, lowering the carbon content of the downstream gas. So I think we have G4 Insights out of Calgary, Quadrant out of BC. We've got Point 3 Biotech Corp, Char Technologies in Ontario. And I'm just trying to be true to all of them. True Energy, I think, was the other.
If you get all of them, you should get a prize. That's
well, I won't be able to remember them. And the last thing I want to say is we are now with moving towards, so now that we have the producers on, we're now seeing some of our emissions monitoring technologies. So we have GHGSat, satellite, one's got satellite in the air, Luxmux and Winterhawk are companies that we've supported. And then finally on transportation, because of course, right, if we've got gas vehicles using gas, so Westport and Hiller Trucks both have technologies that will see gas, either CNG or dual fuel technology. So we will continue to build that, Jared. I get excited about that because that's really what we're trying to do is build this portfolio. We've got now clusters in the portfolio that are now we've got lots of different sort of maybe horses in the race, right? We've taken some bets on some different hydrogen and some different RNGs, and we'll continue to build the portfolios. And then our technology demonstrations take about 2 or 3 years. And so what I didn't speak to in the process, that investment process, is the last piece, and that is the oversight. So stage 3, we set a contract with these companies and we define the project that they're going to undertake. And then we sort of stage gates, we disperse some of the money out to them at junctions throughout the project. And at those junctions, they have to create a milestone report that shows the work that they've done and the technology progression that's happened and the key performance indicators that we're looking for. And those investors have oversight over that. So again, what's great about the investors having oversight of the development of the technology in the portfolio that I just mentioned is that they continue to make sure that the alignment maintains from what the clean tech startup company wanted to do and what the industry desperately needs them to do. And so there's that connection stays for the 2 or 3 years and doesn't let go. So
I see. Well, I know one thing is that I'm going to make a list of all these companies. So I think I've got about 30 shows now booked over the next couple of years. Actually, we had you mentioned Winterhawk. We had them on a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, great little startup.
Okay, so you bring these companies together now. So I understand the essentially the private investment through the committee now, and you said, I found it really interesting because you said about that you help them through these stages. I think that's in stage 2, right? That they would go present now. They would have a better presentation for government funding. Is that right? Would that be kind of stage 2?
Well, better presentation for our industry funding, but for sure, as a co-benefit to that curated pitch and that nicely developed proposal that meets all the check marks of what we're looking for. We take that literally that package of information and discussion, and we then so we provide about 25-30% of the funding to that project to de-risk the technology, and so that startup has got to go out and raise the other money. So we have developed some trusted partnerships with about 7 government organizations. So one, NRCan in Ottawa, who has a lot of clean tech funding for emissions reduction. In Alberta, in your province, we have Emissions Reduction Alberta and Alberta Innovates. In BC, we have the BC Ice Fund and Geoscience BC, I believe, and then Saskatchewan Innovation. So, Jared, when we done our work, we don't stop. We know they've got to generate some co-funding. We won't contract with them until they've generated that co-funding. So
I see.
And we take the package and say, look, folks, there's a need. There's some provincial need money, and there's some federal. And you can take our due diligence at face value, which they do. And they obviously do their own kind of check, but what we don't want the clean tech companies to do is to go back through another organization's process. And so by leveraging our process and maybe tinkering a little bit with the proposal just to get a couple of things maybe we didn't ask for, we save a lot of red tape. We improve the acceleration of clean tech to our industry by doing this kind of sort of brokering of our work to them, and then co-funding comes, and Jared, it works. And so we're not only curating the opportunity for our own needs to make sure that our industry needs are taken care of from our investors, but by design, NGIF was made because it's a granting organization, and governments are granting organizations. It's very easy for us to be in the same room together and talk about these together.
Right.
Confidentiality and paperwork signed, of course. We can sit down and say, look, this is great. And so the spirit is, let's just get these companies through their projects and closer to commercialization.
Sort of that most difficult stage a lot of the times, I'm sure. There's a section I want to do about expanding NGIF, but I want to quickly jump to the end, and then we'll close with the expansion part. Secondary, you got a secondary funding and things like that we wanted to cover. But I'll make it about myself for a moment. We have our show. We have partners that help us book guests. We have our production. We have our guests themselves. We have sponsors. We have a Mining Now show, which is partnership with CIM. So we've got a few moving parts even in our little company. But in your case, you have, major players. And so now I'm going to swing it and make it about you. How do you, and what in your career brought you to a point that you could manage all of those relationships? Now, I'm sure you have an amazing team with you that helps you do it, of course, but I'm really focused on you personally. How did you develop that skill? Because that is anybody watching this who wants to start a new business. You have to be able to work with people, and you have to be able to keep people on side and offer value. It's not just about how personable you are, of course. What has your career has brought you to a point where you're able to effectively manage all those moving parts?
Wow.
Easy
Okay.
question.
Let's go way back. I've always been external, meaning so always been external. I started out my career with an environmental services consulting company, and so I'd have to go out and kind of book consulting projects. Did a lot of environmental assessments and things like that. So always kind of in a plant, and so in a plant and talking to the plant guys or girls, that group of people, you need to kind of know what you're talking about. Otherwise, they're going to laugh at you. So I think very early on in my career, I learned you've got to have a level of knowledge to be able to carry when you're sort of having those conversations. But I was a builder. I think I've always been a builder, and to be honest, I think that is something that came to me. So I like taking things and building them, and so I liked creating the projects in the consulting company. And then later I was with Mitsui, a big multinational company, and there I was doing big projects, a little less on the business development and more on the whole project management side of things. Then from there, so Sustainable Development Technology Canada, big clean tech fund out of Ottawa, which is where I kind of cut my teeth really on clean tech from a startup perspective. And what I've learned along the way is that you need to show up. I think if I had to give guidance on being able to manage relationships, because I did manage the whole deal flow perspective of NGIF on the front end. I created a virtual incubator there. I created a first sort of micro fund, a gas micro fund at STTC, and that's how I met CGA. In fact, so and I think all my jobs, I kind of went from. I somehow learned when I was at Mitsui, I learned about STTC. When I was at STTC, I learned about the next job. And I think each time I was each of these organizations, it was really about having to show up. And I think as you get older, you know that come to the conversation equipped to have a conversation and show up to do and deliver. So your word needs to be something. So at STDC, when I was working with startups, if you don't deliver on that word, or if you don't communicate, right? The debriefs that we do when applicants are told, no, we don't have to do that. But I insist that we circle back, even if it's for a quick call, because I want to show up. I'm not afraid to be able to say, look, it didn't work, but here's why. And that's okay. And I'll gotta tell you, Jared, like even those applicants are thrilled that we offer that debrief. On the investor side, talk to those CEOs and executives. You have to show up. If I didn't go to Calgary a lot in those early days when I was building NGIF and building that sort of upstream community that we now have, I couldn't have done that through phone calls. You have to be in front of people and show. So just to close on that, I would say, what did I learn in my career along the way? You got to show up. You've got to believe. If it's not obvious already, I believe in NGIF. I believe in what we're doing. So, I think the right intent and the right conviction that an individual has with respect to what they're doing, and whatever it is I think what makes people pay attention and say, okay, I'm going to stop and take the meeting, right, and then take the meeting again, and slowly build. And by nature of who I am, I for sure I'm a builder. I like to build things and make them come to life. And to do that, you've got to have numerous conversations with a lot of people over and over.
Mm-hmm. Over and over. Yeah.
Over and over. NGIF was such a new concept. People didn't understand industry-led, industry grants to clean tech. I've never heard of that before. And so, but there was a fundamental belief that this is what we needed, and the belief that it was going to work with government, it was going to work with our industry, it was going to work with clean tech startups. You had to believe in that vision. And so when you have those conversations with the government partners, and you have your conversations with your investors, and I think they have to know that that this is going to work. Because if I didn't believe it was going to work, then I think it would have been a tough sell. And so. So I think that's what I've learned along the way. If I think I answered that question.
No, it's very good, and I was sort of making the checklist in my mind as was, and it's kind of that first thing you said about being knowledgeable. You see the people that show up, but they don't have the tools. They shouldn't have showed up. They showed up too soon. I've been that person. I know how that feels when you go, oh, they went to another level that I wasn't ready for. And then that ability, even when things are tough, those tough conversations, when you show up for those and maintain the relationships through that, that's when you can, you can have working relationships that can last a lifetime. They really can.
But Jared, the one thing I do want to sort of close on that is you also need to know your strengths and things that you're not good at, right? So, I'm great at probably, a handful of things, and I do them really well, but there's probably another hand of things that I'm not so good at. And so you surround yourself with people that can, you do it together as a team. The team at NGIF, like the team we have, they're all super smart in specific ways. And now as as you kind of build the next fund, right? And so you need to, you can't be everywhere at once. You start to lose touch. And so even now the companies I see them at a certain point, but the granularity of when I was involved in the beginning was right through that process. And now so, and that's because I needed, the team, we all do our parts to make it work. And now NJF needs to work with this comprehensive team. In the early days, it was sort of just me out there,
right.
Selling it. Now we're almost 90 million managed, 29 companies. That takes a village.
Yeah, certainly. And this is you talked about building, so this is a perfect way to I think close off the interview with the finishing touches of building up and expanding NGIF. Let's tell the audience about your secondary funding, and I think I don't want to speak if I'll say it. Just tell me if I'm wrong. I think there's an emissions testing center that you're looking at or something.
Yeah,
is that right?
Two growth models, two expansion models that are in the works for NGIF. One is the I'll speak to the testing center first. We received about this is public, so $5 million from a combination of NRCan and Alberta Innovates. And the idea was we responded to a funding call, and that funding call was really about looking for a methane emissions sort of innovation network where companies could go and test their technologies, and also looking for data to be quantified. It's always important now. Data is the big place where we have to spend a lot of time with now. And so we were awarded our bid was to build instrument a live production site with technology validation equipment and with emissions quantification tool sets, and so that cleantech companies could be able to spend time at that site, and hopefully we'd have multiple cleantech companies at that site, so that what's also needed is being able to have operators are different, right? So operators all have different ways of doing things at their specific assets and sites and wellheads and so on. What would be great is if we had 2 or 3 competing technologies, but at a single site. That way you can have a full sort of life cycle view at a consistent operator, and it helps levelize the evaluation, right? And so you can see when they're side by side in the same environment, which ones are maybe better than others, or maybe which ones are better for a particular situation and some are better for a different one. So that was the spirit of that. So this emission, I can't announce where it's at yet, but there's a live site that we're working with. It's going to be an emissions testing center, and we looked to see these technology companies, especially from a methane quantification and management point of view, flourish, be able to do that kind of testing there.
Yeah, that's very cool. When we'll have to. Once that gets everything, maybe at some point we'll have to do a live show there at the site with the companies. It'd be great.
Yeah, and bring in the consortium because it's not just NJF. There's a few other.
Yeah, we can do like a panel or something like that.
Yeah, I'd love that. Just to close on that. So yes, there's an NGIF too. It's our Cleantech Venture. Cleantech Ventures, and it's really to, Jared, complement the current fund. So our current fund is innovation and spends a lot of time in pilots, projects, and field demos. Our venture fund will look more at near commercial technology, so near commercial ventures, and a little closer to commercialization, and continue to help validate and demonstrate the technology, and a little more on the not on the tech demonstration side. It's more on the balance of plant discussions. It's on how to scale up now the company to become cost competitive and work in an actual customer environment. And so that type of project sometimes takes a lot of money, and that's where you start seeing the sort of private capital having to come in and support that kind of scale up. And so the intent with NGIF2 Cleantech Ventures is to take the uncaptured value that we have from the first fund, because those companies that I mentioned before, some of them are now getting ready to scale. So we've got our eye on them, but we also want to target the sweet spot of near commercial clean tech, and also this fund will, unlike the first one, it will most certainly make a good profit that we can distribute back to our investors. So we're looking to close it, develop it and close it this year, but towards the end of the year, and maybe have it operational starting in 2021. So want to talk about joining that fund. It's targeting, I should say that it's the fund is like NGIF1. This fund will be made up of natural gas corporates, some of which will come from NGIF1, and some who are also natural gas corporates who didn't join the first fund, but who have signaled an interest that they would be doing that. And why we're targeting that same natural gas corporate LP environment, as you saw very quickly in our conversation, Jared, it's that peer review process of being able to select the best. And so we figure if we can select the best companies from a scale-up point of view, spend maybe 4 or 5 years with them and then divest, we can help those companies as they mature, their valuations go up. So it's all sort of a good news story on both sides.
And all the if people go to your website, of course, we'll have links and everything to that. If people go to your website, they can contact you directly through the pages and the contact pages. John, thanks for coming on. This is one of these shows where if you glance at the overview of NGIF, you go, okay, they fund new startup projects, okay, and then you start drilling in, and it's like a whole new world. And we could go on that's just like each of those companies laid out. There's 30 shows right there. So it's sort of like the starting point, but it's such an important thing to understand, especially for companies trying to expand and get into the market. You need to understand what is happening in the market, who the players are, the proper processes to go through. And honestly, you laid it out beautifully. I learned a lot, so I know anybody else did as well. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Jared. Good to meet you virtually. Hopefully next trip to Calgary or your next trip to Ottawa, we can have a face-to-face and
it's I do miss it. I have to say, our show, people used to come in, they'd have a coffee in the morning, and they got to meet the team, and it was not just a show. It's not just that now, but there was something, we had our chairs set up so people could relax in the morning. There was sort of an experience that came along with it, and we're doing our best to provide that still. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when people can come into our studio and actually, kind of be with us for a few hours and do the show. But so many people like yourself have been so supportive, still coming on the show, taking the time, and we really do appreciate it, John.
Well, Jared, I'll bring I'll talk to the startup companies we have in our portfolio. I'd love to, bring some of them in. Just as I am enthusiastic about the work we do at NJF, they are equally on
yes.
companies. So I think that's a terrific kind of segue to kind of look forward to in that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching the show. This, if you have any interest in the investment side of the natural gas industry, I mean, this was the show to watch. So thank you for joining us. Please subscribe, share this out, share this with people that are in the industry. We have, as you know, you're probably watching from a different industry. There's so many of us joining in from all over across industry. So thank you. Please let us know, give us feedback on the show, and follow the links below to learn more about NGIF. Thank you, John, for coming on the show. Please subscribe, everybody, share, talk, chat, and we will see you on the next episode of Crownsmen Energy.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you would also like to help support the production of the show, head on over to crownsmen.com/donations, where you will find two options, the $5 monthly subscription option and the support heavy industry one-time donation option. Again, that is crownsmen.com/donations. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next episode.